Hi everyone. Okay, so I'm basically reintroducing myself because unless you followed me on my old channel, which all the videos from there have pretty much been deleted by myself, or if you know me from Five Waiting Wombs, then you really don't have a clue who I am or my infertility journey. So I'll start off by saying that um, I kind of always knew something was wrong. Um, I let's go back, from when I was a child. I started my cycle, my menstrual cycle, when I was 9 years old. Which some people may say, "Holy cow, that's really young," but my mother did also. So it really wasn't a surprise to me. Well, it was, but it wasn't a surprise too much because of her also starting really young. Well, I started having really, really bad periods. And when I mean really, really bad, um, they were pretty much disabling. I would miss a lot of school because I was going back and forth to the bathroom every 5 to 10 minutes. And I was in a lot of pain. And, but I won't go into the gory details of why I was going to the bathroom every 5 or 10 minutes. So, as you can imagine, being in a public school system, that was disruptive to both my learning and the other children's learning too. So, my mom took me to the doctor. When I was 10 years old, I had my first pap smear. And as you can imagine, that was pretty traumatic. Having a strange man's hands in my vagina. So, at that time, the doctor was a Middle Eastern man with a very thick accent, and he said to me, and I remember it clear as a bell, even though he didn't say a whole lot, but he said, "You have a fat woman's disease. You will not have babies." And that's all I remember. And my mom didn't pursue it, and that was the end of that. I was put on birth control when I was 10, and I stayed on birth control until I was 15. Um, there was really no need for me to be on birth control, as far as the sex side, other than to help control my periods. Well, when I was 15, I started having some really bad problems with my blood pressure. Um, so I decided to take myself off of it, and it helped. Um, so, anyways, now let's fast forward a little bit. Um, I was in a relationship, a common law marriage, if you want to call it that, for almost 5 years, and we never made it official, thankfully. That's a whole other topic. um, we had he had children from a previous marriage. He had 3 children that I helped raise for the 5 years that we were together, because they moved in with us. They still, we kind of shared custody with their mother, and anyways, that's a whole other topic too, that I won't go into for their own, protection and their privacy. Um, but anywho, um, so we, kind of talked about us maybe having a child together, because I knew I always wanted to be a mother. And even though I didn't conceive during that time, I'm glad I didn't, because the relationship did not, well, no relationship ends well, but it really didn't end well. So that's a good thing. But I started going to the doctor at that point when I was still with him, because I stopped having a period altogether. I went 9 months without having a period. Um, went to two different doctors. The first doctor, he didn't have a clue. I told him, what was going on, and he gave me progesterone, and it helped. I started my periods back up. Well, then, when we really started talking about trying to conceive, I went to another doctor, because I had read an article, surprisingly, in one of my sister's teen magazines. I was over at my mom's house and my sister was there, and I was flipping through one of her little magazines and saw this article about PCOS. And I read all the symptoms and read this girl's story and everything, and I was like, holy crap, this is what I have. There was no doubt in my mind that I had PCOS. So I go to this other doctor and I tell him, I'm like, look, this is what I got, help me. And he really wasn't willing to do anything. He said, I can't help you get pregnant. So I was like, okay. And we really couldn't afford to go to a fertility doctor. He was an OBGYN. So that was the end of that. And I'm really glad that I didn't pursue it. So then, after I left him, I met my husband about a month and a half later. And we were married 6 months later. I know, sounds kind of crazy, doesn't it? But we actually started trying to conceive pretty close after we met. I'm not a promiscuous type or anything like that, but when we met, we knew right when we met that we were going to be married, and there was no doubt in either of our minds. And he wants to be a father so badly, and I told him right away before we even got serious that here it is. I laid it out on the table. I have problems getting pregnant, so take it or leave it. And even though we weren't married yet, we did start trying in February of 2006. And what I mean by trying is we just had unprotected sex. We weren't medicated or anything like that. Then we were married in July of 2006, and we started kicking it up a notch and started trying charting, taking the temperature every morning, checking cervical mucus. At that time, I really didn't know a whole lot about infertility. I got some infertility books and things like that. Well, let me back up just a hair. When I was 14 or 15, I believe, I had some really bad ovarian pain. Went to the doctor, got an ultrasound, vaginal, or not vaginal, it was outer ultrasound. Anyways, they found a cyst on one of they thought was my ovary. And they said, oh, it's normal, it's fine. Whatever. Didn't want to do anything about it. Fine, whatever. My mother didn't pursue it. So that's neither here or there. But let's see, this was it 2009? No, 2008. Yeah, had to be 2008. I'd have to look back. But anyways, I started having the pain again, really bad, really, really bad. And so I started going to another OBGYN and was also working with an RE, and they found a cyst, a very large one. I can't remember how to actually say it. It starts with an S, the kind of cyst that it is. I'll give you some info on it below. Anyways, it's the type of cyst that has debris. is what he called it. It has hair and teeth and, yeah, gross stuff. But anyways, it was pretty large. It was about the size of a grapefruit. It wasn't actually attached to my ovary. It was attached to one of my fallopian tubes. So, but they didn't know that until they got in there because everything was so smashed and pushed up. My uterus was tilted. Everything, my bladder was squished. Everything was all sorts of mangled and not where it was supposed to be. So he's like, no wonder you're not getting pregnant. You know, everything's lopsided. So he got the cyst out, and while doing